Thank you for coming to this Zoom session of the San Diego Independent Scholars Works in Progress group this afternoon. Our guest speaker today, Phil Stover, is going to present a practical perspective on the joys, tribulations, and freedom of producing a book yourself. Mr. Stover is on the executive board as treasurer of the National Coalition of Independent Scholars, NCIS. He retired from a 40-year career in education, including service as deputy superintendent here in the San Diego Unified School District and interim superintendent of the Sweetwater Union High School District in Chula Vista. Phil now lives in Mata Ortiz, Chihuahua. He writes and speaks extensively on Mexican religious history. In addition to having been awarded an honorary doctorate, he is a PhD candidate in Mexican history at the University of Kent at Canterbury in England, where he is recognized as the oldest graduate student in the history of the history program and also in the history of the university, and is expecting to receive his degree next year. He also serves as a guest lecturer in Mexican religious history at the School of Anthropology and History of Northern Mexico, also in Chihuahua. He has self-published 8 books in both English and Spanish, including his expansive survey, Religion and Revolution in Mexico's North, Even Unto Death, Tengamos Fe, which was awarded a non-fiction prize by Writer's Digest and has been adopted as a textbook in Mexican studies at Arizona State University. His book, A Buyer's Guide to Mata Ortiz Pottery, has been named a bestseller by Amazon Books in their ceramics category. He is currently working hard on his doctoral dissertation and a book on the culture and challenges of U.S. public school districts. I am happy and very grateful to present to you Phil Stover. Silent.
You need to unmute yourself, Phil.
Phil, unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Thank you, Ken. It's good to be back in San Diego, kind of, sort of. Spent 10 very happy years there working in two school districts. And I used to lecture a lot at Point Loma Nazarene and at San Diego State. And was involved in a lot of conferences at UCSD. They have a Mexican studies program there that I was fairly heavily involved in at UCSD. So we're back and we'll go right into our presentation. I'm going to share the screen. I may not make it full screen because I need to see some of you so I can tell. We have very unstable internet here. We are in the boonies. There's about 850 people in this little town, and our internet is less than ideal. So sometimes I freeze, but normally within 45 seconds or so, I'll be right back. I've never lost a conference in all the conferences I do. Never lost a whole conference. So I'm going to share the screen, and I've got you all over here on the right. And now, can you see that? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good. All right, so we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, the idea of self-publishing. It used to be years ago, the idea was if you couldn't get someone to publish your book, you would kind of become a second-class citizen and publish it yourself, and it becomes a second-class book. Today, that's changed dramatically in the new world of publishing, as university presses are closing and cutting down their list dramatically in recent years. it really has become, and I said the joys, the tribulations, and the freedom, because there's an awful lot of good things about publishing your books yourself. And today, in today's day and age, it does not carry the stigma or the negativity that it used to. ProQuest owns Boker. Boker is the company for the United States that you have to get your ISBN number from if you seek to publish a book yourself. Boker in 2019 said that nearly 1.7 million titles were self-published in the United States in 2018, an incredible 264% increase in just 5 years. According to their records, Amazon's market share of self-published print books in the United States increased from 6% in 2007 to 92% as of 2018. So Amazon is the major player in this, and we'll talk about that and the implications of that as we go along. The Alliance of Independent Authors, we're all independent scholars here. There's a group of independent authors. They do tremendous things to help independent authors. They indicates that officially in 2018, 675 million print books were sold in the US and 191 million in the United Kingdom. Ebooks, audiobooks generated billions of dollars of sales, and that goes up by about, for the last 5 years, about 40% a year. It's just an incredibly booming market. One of the independent publishing organizations has told us that 67% of top-ranking self-published titles were written by women, versus only 39% of the top traditionally published titles. So there's tremendous opportunity for everyone here to self-publish, and it's in one sense it's difficult and challenging, in the other sense it's not so hard, and it's really an enjoyable experience. I've been blessed to do 8 different books in Spanish and English, I can't tell you that all of them have sold a whole bunch, but some of them have, and it's been a wonderful experience. According to Ali, that independent publishing group, the average trade published author earns 7.5% of their book's cover price if you publish in the trade through a traditional publishing. If you publish with an agent, you're going to lose 15% of that. So the return tends to be very low. I have many academic friends who have published their books through, like, for example, British presses, academic presses, and they don't sell a whole lot of books, and they make very little money off of them. And sometimes the books are $80 a piece for the person that buys them. So it's quite an interesting phenomenon. Self-publishing platforms like Amazon, Apple Books, Ingram, Spark, and Kobo pay up to 70% of each book sold to authors. So it kind of depends on your arrangements with them, but you can sell quite a bit or make quite a bit, whether they sell them or you sell them. For example, I sell an awful lot of books at conferences. I do a lot of conferences, and I sell a lot of books directly to the people. I buy them from Amazon and sometimes from Ingram, but we'll talk about that later. Those who sell direct independent authors from their own websites or at conferences or at bookstores or at, they can take in up to 96% of the retail value of the book, depending on, again, your relationship with Amazon and how you procured the books. This presentation, I'm going to talk to you mostly about a strategy that combines using Amazon and Ingram Spark. I don't know if you're all familiar with Ingram Spark. Ingram is the largest publisher of books. Well, historically the largest publisher. Amazon has taken over that role, but Ingram is the book that college, university, bookstores go to buy their textbooks, to buy the books that they sell in their bookstores, and that libraries go to buy their books that they put in their independent bookstores, And they also are the source for buying for libraries. So you have libraries, university bookstores, and independent bookstores. To buy a book from them, most of them do not cooperate with Amazon at all. So you can't sell your books through Amazon to those people. You can at independent bookstores. You can put your ISBN number, and some do cooperate with Amazon and some don't. But Ingram is in Tennessee. Two important things Ingram did to overcome the huge growth of Amazon. They bought Baker and Taylor. And I don't know if you're familiar with Baker and Taylor. It's one of the oldest publishers of books in the United States. And Baker and Taylor controls the college and university textbook market and many of the college and university bookstore market. And now that Ingram owns them, they have that whole piece of the pie: independent stores, college and university bookstores, college libraries. If you go down to the San Diego library system, they will buy their books, basically new books, from Baker and Taylor. So if you have Amazon, which dominates the world of selling books to a mama and pop who go on Amazon to buy a book, and you have your book listed with Ingram, then you have Ingram, Baker and Taylor, and Amazon all selling your books. And there's almost no one in America or in the world, actually, that can't buy your book through one of those sources, whether they walk into a nice little bookstore in La Jolla, or whether they go to a big chain store, or whether they go to a college or university and have to buy a textbook, or if they go on Amazon to buy a book. If you go on Barnes & Noble has a connection with both Amazon and Ingram. So there's not many places you can't buy a book if you're on with those folks. First things first, go through this really quickly. I think that sometimes people jump to wanting to write a book before they think it through, what they're going to do. Some of the people I see that have the greatest problems are those who don't think it through before they jump in the water. So I think you have to determine the essence and the style of your book. Is it a history? Is it about tourism? Is it a combination of different styles? Is it popular? Is it academic? Is it narrative? Are you telling a story in a narrative sense? You really got to figure out what you want to write about and what style of writing you want your book to be. Then you want to determine the method of publication of the book. And there's basically, you can write the book yourself, do all the putting together of the book, put the design together, do the cover, and you can send it to a printer. And the printer will send 500 copies or 5,000 copies for you to put in your garage, and you sell it yourself. They're not going to help you or do anything else for you, but they'll print your book for you. Print on demand is the Amazon Ingram. Ingram used to have huge warehouses in Nashville. They don't anymore. They've sold them all. Amazon has very few book warehouses. They will, if someone orders your book on a Tuesday morning and they promise delivery on Wednesday or Thursday, your book will be printed that night in one of their 2 or 3 printing companies around the United States, and you'll have it within 2 days. And they print one book, or for Arizona State, depending on the class, I may sell 150 at once, and they'll print those 150. It doesn't matter whether it's one book or 150 or 5,000. They'll print, and that's what print on demand is. It's doing it overnight without having to warehouse, and it saves the companies a tremendous amount of money because they don't have warehouses. Then you can combine. You can do publisher and print on demand. So there's different ways to integrate those together. I always think it's good to understand a theme, make a theme for your cover, make a theme for your text, what you say about your book, and keep that theme consistent so people will not be surprised when they think they're buying one thing and then buying something different. And then you've got to have a budget. It costs some money to do this. It's not very much, but it does cost some money. And how are you going to get your funding? who's going to volunteer if you're going to ask your cousin to edit it for you, or how they will be, who will be paid if you pay someone to design the cover for you. And we talk about all that here in a minute. How are you going to fund this thing that you're going to create? Very important. I cannot emphasize this enough. Who's going to own the copyright of the book? And I will tell you that I know of no cases where you should give any publishing company, whether it's Amazon or whether it's University of Arizona Press, the copyright to your book. You want to keep the copyright forever and ever and ever. And you can pass that down to your heirs. But I do not believe you should ever give the copyright, even if they give you 5% more royalty or something. You want to keep control. It's just what I'm giving you here, just my experience and my opinion. So take it, you just could take that for what it's worth. You need to develop a marketing plan. How will you sell these books? Marketing is different than selling. So you'll sell some books, but then you also have to market, which is basically the advertising function, making your books available to people. You need to develop a plan for that. You can hire somebody to do it, or you can do it yourself. I've never hired anybody. I've hired people to do two things: to do a finished cover, and to the first book I ever did, I had somebody do the interior design because that was intimidating. Now, what I wished I would have done several times was hire somebody to do the index, because there's nothing harder, I think, in writing a book and getting it to publication than doing the index. It's a nightmare. It was for me, at least. I put it that way. Then I think you have to develop a structure for the book. Very important. And the earlier you do this, the better it is. The size of the fonts, the style of the fonts, the spacing of the lines, the forward material, the chapter, how you're going to divide up the chapters, a glossary, the citations. Are you going to do footnotes or endnotes at the end of the chapter or at the end of the book, or no citations at all? Are you going to have a bibliography or no bibliography? Are you going to have illustrations? Are you going to have color? Are you going to have black and white? And my favorite part, are you going to have an index in the book or not? And we'll talk about all those in just a minute. If you're going to edit a book and be the editor of a book that you're going to publish, that's a whole different set of challenges. Now you have to, hire the authors, contract with the authors, determine who's going to be asked to write what chapter, what the subject's going to be, hold training for the authors, not because they haven't written some wonderful books, but what you need to have in an edited book is stylistic consistency. You really got to have the person be able to go chapter to chapter, written by 7 different people, and have the style be consistent. I did a chapter for a Notre Dame Press book on the revolution in Mexico, and he had eight different people writing chapters, and we had a lot of trouble trying to get the chapters to meld, because they were all written in different styles by different people, and we got all that done. And then Notre Dame cut their Latin American list tremendously, Notre Dame Press, and so they didn't publish it anyway. So that happens too. That's the other end of that story. You have to be, when you're good, and that was with Notre Dame Press, which was not self-publishing. That was with the professor at the University of Washington was the editor. We were the chapter writers, and he was devastated. They let him down because he did all that work. All we did was write a chapter. Set deadlines for chapters to be provided to the editor. Set deadline for the author to review and return the chapters to the authors for revisions and corrections. I certainly wouldn't jump into that for my first book. That's a very hard, complicated process to do an edited book. I think as quickly as possible, the earlier in the process, the better, that you create an interior design template for your book instead of a basic Word manuscript. It's very hard to take a Word manuscript and convert it into a book. It takes a lot of time and energy. It's much better to write the book in the design template. Don't write it in Word, and then now you'll be writing it in Word, whether you have a template or not, let's say, but set up your template to be a book template, not a manuscript template. and you can save a tremendous amount of time and grief. Now I'm going to give you my still varying opinion here on the best strategy to use if you want to do your own book. I would publish it using KDP. KDP is the Amazon publishing platform. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to follow. It is highly automated, and it's simple to do. And if you do that using their system, you have to go through 2 approvals, but when you get your second approval from Amazon done, you can start selling your book the next day. It goes right online, boom, and you can start selling very, very quickly. So and then I also think you should publish your book using Ingram. It's 2 separate processes. Ingram charges $39. Amazon, it's free. They don't charge you anything. Ingram charges you $39.99 or $49.99 to list your book. But every year they have different ways to do that for free. If you join Ali, that group I told you about earlier, you can put your Ali code in and you don't pay anything to list it. So the $39 or $49 is waived. And there are several strategies for doing that with Ingram. And then Ingram, you know, Amazon is the best way to sell to the mama and papa that want to go online and buy a book. Ingram, Baker, and Taylor is the best way to sell your book to institutions, libraries, bookstores, and universities. I sell most of my books, my non-Mott Ortiz book. My Mott Ortiz book goes all to individuals. I sell most of my books through the institutional end because of the textbook connection there. But I fairly often get something from a bookstore that I see it's been sold at a bookstore, an independent bookstore. You're going to be asked in the process of how you want your royalty and distribution rights. The royalty is fairly simple. In my mind, you tell them you want the most royalty they're willing to give you, but the distribution rights are very important. If you set your distribution rights with Amazon to be exclusive, you cannot list it with Ingram and Baker and Taylor. They won't take it because your ISBN is locked to Amazon, and you do not want to do that. So when it comes down to the time in the process where you're looking to set distribution rights, are you going to distribute it in Japan? Are you going to distribute it in Mexico? Are you going to distribute it in England? It's funny. My Mexican books sell in Europe. People are very interested in Mexican history in Europe. And I find that very interesting. So I sell it, I'm not going to exaggerate, not a lot, but a number of books in Germany. So I had to sign up for international distribution rights. But I didn't give Amazon at any point the complete rights to those books, or you'd be cut off from the institutional route. Ingram, they give you the local bookstores, as I've said 4 times now. Both of them together work hand in glove. They used to be competitors when I first started doing this, and they didn't like each other. Now somebody on both sides has figured out they each make more money if they're connected with the other. They're cooperating now much more so than they did in the past. Ingram, Baker, and Taylor, and Amazon. I believe now we're going to talk here about interior design software. You have to turn this manuscript or your ideas and thoughts into an actual book. And keeping it simple is the best way. Microsoft Word, you can buy a fancy $700 book design software. And if you've got the money, have at it. But Word, in my experience, Word does just as good a job if you know how to use Word. And in terms of interior design. And if you combine Adobe PDF, because to use either Ingram or Amazon, you have to just put your cover and your covers and your content, interior content, to them in Adobe PDF format. So you have to be familiar with Adobe PDF, and you can't get the free Adobe. It's not sophisticated enough to do what you need to do. So I have Adobe, it's called Adobe Acrobat Pro DC. And that has everything in it that enables me to go back and forth between Word and Adobe without losing formatting. If you try and use the cheap Adobe and you do your manuscript in Word, you got to convert it to Adobe to send it to Amazon or to Ingram, you're going to lose formatting. And it's going to be a little bit of a nightmare. So I highly recommend don't use the free version of Adobe for this kind of work. Spend a little money, and it's like $120 a year or something, and get the professional Adobe Acrobat. That makes it much, much simpler. I recommend it. I'm going to show you an example here in a minute. As soon as possible in the process, if you're going to write your book in Word, set your settings in Word to a book interior design style, especially the format, the margins, the fonts, and the line spacing. And I'll show you some margin recommendations. The font, anywhere 9.5 to 10.5. The font design that you like. There are fonts that people recommend for books, different than Times Roman, different than some of the other real popular ones. Arial doesn't do well. Times, what is it? Whatever it is. They don't do well with books. But you can get recommendations, pick your own style. There's a lot of old fonts now that are being used for books. And they're like 16th, 17th century fonts that people have gotten the rights to them. And they're now selling them as packages of fonts. And they're very cool. They're just very, very cool for books, and they're very, very popular now. I would use a standardized size. Don't say, oh, I want my book to be 6.3/4 inch by 12.92 inches. It is not going to happen. They have probably 30 different standard sizes for a book that you can pick. Just pick one of their standard sizes, and then make you have to have the same size for Amazon and Ingram. You don't want two different sizes of books. That's going to create chaos. So you use the same dimensions for the book for both of those companies. All photos and maps, you got to have them 300 DPI. They won't take them if they're not, you'll get rejected if they're not 300 DPI. Color pictures really jumps the price up. Really jumps the price up for people, the retail price tremendously, because the publishing costs are much greater. So if you can, don't use color in your both will do color photos, but your price jumps way up with color, and that might be just fine, because you might be doing a picture book and you want colors. So that's a whole different ballgame. Little text, lots of pictures, art books, that kind of thing tend to be much more expensive. The reason is because of the color. Microsoft Word, I believe, in my experience, is completely adequate for interior design. If you like some older fonts, you can buy a font for $20. And when you buy a font, you buy all the different sizes, you buy the italicized, you buy the bolding, and you can download and you can insert right into Word now. Word has the ability you can insert fonts that you buy into Word completely. And please set the font size and style as early in the process as possible. I have a gentleman I'm helping right now writing a book on the history of Casas Grandes. He told me his book was 350 pages and he had to cut it down. What he had was a 350-page Word manuscript. I took it from him, and I know him, he's a good friend, so I agreed to put it into a book format for him. I worked on it. The book was 824 pages. 824 pages. Nobody's going to take an 824 page on the history of Casas Grandes. And he was horrified, because I told him, he said, I got to write some more. And I said, no, you got to cut half of your book. No, because when you look on a page that is a Word manuscript is not a page in a 6x9 book. So he's still cutting, and he hasn't come back to me to ask me any more help, but that's not true. He has. And Grace, he's Dick O'Connor's best friend, and Dick's helping him write the book too. So Grace knows Dick O'Connor very well, and Dick's involved in that book. Now here's a sample layout for you that I find works real well for a Word for using Word. It's vital. This is very important. I should have put this in red and underline it and bold it. But it is vital that you become proficient in the use of Microsoft Word's page and section breaks. If you're going to write a book, you may never use them to write a letter to somebody, or even to write an article for a journal, a New Mexico Historical Society journal. You may not need section breaks. To write a book, you have to know how to use page breaks and section books, because you want to set up every chapter as a separate section. The proficiency in the use of headers and footers is essential. And then how page and section breaks, headers, footers, and page numbering all work together. It's not hard once you get used to it, but it's very hard when you're just learning how to do it. So please don't start writing the book until you've gotten more proficient in using page breaks and section breaks and how they all work. If you want to number your pages in your book, which you should do, the section breaks is how you number the pages, because each chapter is going to be certain pages, and it's very complicated. It's complicated, but it's not terrible. A sample margin setting for my books, it may be applied to a whole section of the book, like a chapter, or the entire book. The margin settings, font size, and line spacing dramatically impact the number of pages of your book. And I think Amazon publishes up to about 600 pages, I believe, but then they don't go more than that. My first book was 440 pages, and they did that one for me. So here's an example, top margin, and you have to change your settings here to mirror margins. To write a book, you must go to mirror margins and use the mirror margin settings. Of course, portrait normally, unless you're doing a landscape book. Down here, you can set your settings to apply to the whole book, or just to a section, a chapter, or just the index, or just the bibliography, or just the table of contents, or just your forward material. And then you have to have your top margin, your inside margin, your bottom margin, your outside margin, and then your gutter. The gutter is the portion of the book where it's bound. Your gutter has to be bigger than your outside, your top, and your bottom margin, because they're actually going to, here's a book, you can see this, this is the gutter margin on both sides here. And on every other page, it's on every other page. So on every other page, your big margin is here, like on this page. And then on this page, the big margin is in here. And these are your outside margins. So you have to have room for the publishing house to bind your book. So you've got to have a bigger interior margin than you do, and it's called the gutter on the inside where they actually do the binding. Mirror margins means it's going to be on page 13, it's going to look this way, and on page 14, it's going to be set up just the opposite, and that's for the binding. So that you can bind. Not hard to do. You set this up and you put it for the whole book, and you don't ever have to look at it again. It's done from the beginning. Except if you go with, with like indexes, you may want to change the margin. You go with your bibliography, and then depending how you set up your citations, it could be a little bit different for that as well. Okay, you have to have an ISBN number. Where do you get your ISBN number? It's the International Standard Book Number, ISBN. Every book published in America has got to have an ISBN number. You can't get published without it. Boker is a division of ProQuest. The only place in America you can buy it's a monopoly. It's the only place you can buy an ISBN number. You can buy one, and you can buy 100. It's very expensive to buy one. And I buy blocks of 10 from them. If you buy one, you're going to pay like $150 for an ISBN number. If you buy 10, it's like $250, $300. So it's better, especially if you're going to have a Kindle, a paper book and a digital book. You don't have to have an ISBN number for a digital book. It's not required, but it's best to have one anyway. So you would want, if you have two different versions of your book, and one is paper and one is Kindle, you want 2 ISBN numbers for that book. And you have to buy them from Boker. And they have Christmas sales, they have Easter sales, they have different kind of sales. But you can see where I said we're publishing more than 1.5 million titles every year. And every one of those titles comes from Boker, the ISBN number. So they're having a booming business. I thought about buying Boker stock, but it's privately held, so can't do that. Then you may want to have, citations are tricky. Those of you that did dissertations, I don't have to tell you a single solitary word about that. But there are citation softwares now that you can purchase to help you tremendously with your endnotes, footnotes, bibliography, and your citations. There are some that you have to buy. RefWorks is one of the most widely used. My favorite, and you can ignore this if you want, my favorite is Citavi. Citavi is brand new. It's a Swiss company. It's based in Switzerland. And I've been able to do things through that citation software in my dissertation and in my academic books that I couldn't do otherwise. There are also some free ones that if you can't buy one, I pay for Citavi. Don't quote me, but I think it's $80 a year for Citavi. RefWorks is more. It's more expensive. It's been around forever, and it's more expensive. But Zotero and Mendeley are both excellent. They're free. Don't cost you a penny. You can get that to help you with your citations, with your endnotes, your footnotes, and your bibliography. Now, all of these have the most wonderful thing. I think it's just great. You can install these citation softwares directly into your browser. Whatever browser you use, whether it's Chrome, whether it's Firefox, whether it's the new Edge, they all have plugins. So you can plug in RefWorks, Citavi, Zotero, and Mendeley into your browser so that if you happen to find a PDF of an academic paper you like online, you can click your Citavi click, and it will automatically download the reference into your dissertation package, not into your dissertation, but into your project. They call it a project. And that helps form your bibliography. It knows your, and you have to tell it your style. The next thing down on here is your style of citations. And like a dissertation, your university tells you got to use this one. But when you do your own book, you can do whatever you want, whichever style you like, APA or MLA or Chicago, whatever you happen to think is the best, you can do your own. So in each of these citation softwares, they have every style in their database. So they will actually put it in the correct style for the citation style that you want to use. I have to use MHRA, which is a big European style. It's a big British style for my book, for my dissertation. So I have one project is set up in MHRA, one project is set up in Chicago, and Citavi knows how to set up each one. So it's just amazing. You don't have to do it. I won't say it does it for you, but it does 90% of it for you. And with the browser plugins and the Microsoft Word, you're typing away and you're just typing away. And in your project list, now you have a footnote and you're going to quote a citation from Dr. Katz. You can then go into Citavi, click Katz, double click on it, and it puts your endnote or your footnote right into the page for you in the correct format most of the time. So I'm going to say that too, because it's not infallible most of the time, but it only puts in what it finds. And so what I do is I go to WorldCat. Are you all familiar with WorldCat? WorldCat is an online library for all around the world, and you can find any book that's in any library anywhere. I will put the book I'm going to reference into WorldCat. Citavi can find that book through WorldCat and can automatically download the reference for it. You have to tell it which year. Say it's the 16th edition. Well, the reference is going to be different for that. So you got to tell it you want the 16th edition, but it's got it in there. So it's kind of amazing. But please make sure you install the plugins in Microsoft Word and in your browser, and it will make your work much, much easier. Citation styles, you all know, you've all done your academic work. You know which ones you like and don't like. Sometimes with Notre Dame, I didn't have a choice when we did the Notre Dame book. We had to do it with the Notre Dame style, which was Chicago. And they wanted it after every chapter, not at the end of the book. So endnotes or footnotes. And then, but when you do it yourself, you have your own personal preference. You can do it as you wish. Indexing software. I went through 10 years of a financial crisis at San Diego Unified School District, and the worst financial crisis the state had for spending. And I don't remember cussing twice, but I cussed twice per page. It's a good thing my parents are no longer around to hear that, but indexing is very hard, very difficult, very challenging. That's all I'm going to say. But there are ways to make it easier. It needs to be the very final thing that you ever do in your book preparation. It can't be, you can't do it in the middle. You can't do it as you go, because pages numbers will always change until you have your final formatting absolutely completed. So don't even think of the index until you get to that point. There are 5 or 6 index generators that are for professional indexers. You can hire somebody to index your book for you. They are $600 to $700 for the indexing software. To hire somebody to do it is probably $1,200 or so to do an index for you of a book. So the fancy are very expensive. These two that I had listed here are about $60 to $70 for each of them, and they're not per year. Once you buy it, you own it. Now, and they will send you updates. I found out with one company, the company got sold to another company, and they didn't like that idea. You don't have to pay every year, so it kind of changed. But PDF Index Generator is a company that you can buy their software, and TextTrack, you can use theirs, and they both have strengths and weaknesses. But you have to work in PDF. You can't work in Word with both of them, and there still is a lot of work for you to do, even though they will help you set it up and create an index. And then they both will put the index in your manuscript, in your PDF manuscript. They'll attach it at the end, and you don't have to do that. So that's a benefit. You can buy, again, the better ones. They have more features, but again, it's expensive, and you haven't earned a penny yet on your book, so you may not want to do that. But KDP is going to put you through 2 reviews. You don't even think about indexing a book until you get the rest of your book, including the cover, through their approval process. Book cover design, integrating the entire process of book cover creation with KDP. They are very exacting in their requirements for your book cover. There are many cover designers that will help you work on it. I've had good results from using Upwork. It's a freelance group. They will connect freelancers with authors and people who specialize in cover design. I've done all my preliminary covers, and then I send them through Upwork to a professional to make them better. And I usually, doing it that way, I pay $75 to $80 a cover for them to do that, to make a final, pretty, because cover is fairly important. And they know how to make a good cover that's a good Amazon cover, because you have a little thumbnail that's about this big that people look at. You can click on it and make it bigger, but the data says you have like 4 seconds for somebody to see your book and see if they like the way it looks. So I do go to freelancers, but I also have the text ready for the freelancer for both the front and the back cover, and any photos that I'd like them to put into but I don't have fancy photography editing, so I let them do that for the covers. Translation software, you can't replace a human translator at this point with artificial intelligence. but there are still translation softwares. My favorite, and again, I'm giving you the ones I like the best, and because of their cost and their functionality and DeepL. DeepL is a Danish translation company, brand new. They've only been in business for a couple of years, and they've by far the best translations that I've found. And they're growing like mad, and they have about, I think they're up to 20, 25 languages now that they will translate, and they'll do an article or a page for free, and you can do up to 5 book-length manuscripts a month if you want to translate something when you buy the rights to their program. Almost done here. One final benefit to the use of KDP and Ingram is that you can make certain changes to the interior. This is what I like a lot, and I can explain to you why I like it so much. I did a book in an initial book of 440 pages. Then it was suggested to me that I divide it into 2 books for a number of reasons. And so I had to redo a lot of things in the design of the book. If you publish your book with the University of California Press, you can't do that. You can't say, well, I want to put my book in Spanish. So I've taken my English books and had them translated into Spanish. You can't do that if the University of California Press publishes your book. You can't say, oh my goodness, I found some typos and it got through the copy editor, it got through me, so I need to fix those. You can't do that if you go through University of New Mexico Press. But if you do your own, you can make all those changes, all those corrections, or you say, I just decided this book is done and I hate the font. I just can't stand the font I did it in. I want to change the font. I want to change the line space. You can do all of that for free. It doesn't cost you a nickel. You do it yourself, and you can do that through both Amazon and Ingram. Those are huge advantages, because when you publish a book through a publishing company, you really lose a lot of control from marketing to making any changes. This is just a thing that's be careful about using the term bestseller or best-selling on Amazon. People abuse that all the time, and I'll explain why. My Motto Ortiz book is right here. Here is English, and here is Spanish. I deliberately made it a small book so people could put it in their suitcase so they could bring it here and use it when they're on their way and that. This book, I do claim this as a bestseller because it has consistently for 2 years been in the top 100 best-selling Amazon books in its category. That's the key phrase. When you write a book and you publish it in Amazon, you're going to assign 3 categories to it. They're going to list that book under those categories. This is listed under ceramics and pottery. It's listed under Latin American ceramics and pottery, and it's listed under the history of ceramics and pottery. 3 categories. In 2 of those, almost every single solitary month, it's in the top 100 best-selling of all those books. Now, it's tricky because if your book is in the top 100 best-selling books on the Civil War, you got to sell a lot of books. If your book is in the best 100 for Latin American ceramics and pottery, you're not going to sell as many books, but you still may be in the best 100. Amazon, if you go on Amazon, you'll see today, I looked today just because I was talking to you today, and in 2 of the 3 categories, this book is number 19 and number 23 in that category for the best-selling books. Now, that list changes every hour. That's the other interesting thing. They update it every single hour. So you could be a bestseller 1 hour and not. So the very first day you publish a book and you tell your family, you tell your relatives, you tell your people that work with you, I got a book listed, and they all buy it for that day. It's a bestseller in your category. Maybe never again. hope it is. But I don't claim to be a bestseller for my book that won the Writer's Digest Award. I claim that because that was a big deal to me at that time. But I do claim this one of my 8 books, all my 8 books. This is a bestseller, and you'll see it when you go into the category listed in the best-selling books on Amazon. It's there. but only in that category. So don't say, got one of the 100 best books. You know, you're not Grisham, but maybe somebody is, I don't know. But if within your category, that is how Amazon defines a bestseller within the particular category that you have listed your book in. Mine is the best-selling Mata Ortiz book. There's no question about that. But the other Mata Ortiz books are in the same category. So I usually outsell them, but I don't outsell some other book. And then I hope you found this presentation helpful in your exciting journey as an independent author. I post these presentations on my website, so you can download. You can actually click on it and download it if you want it. It's probably going to be available on one of your. I think it's going to go on one of your websites or something as well, perhaps. And so I'm ready to take questions. If anybody has any questions, or if I've confused you all tremendously, please feel free to. I don't have my email address is on my website, and it's the easiest one is pstover@rrvmo.com. rrvmo.com. Rancho Rio Vista Mata Ortiz. It's rrvmo.com, but it's also in my website if you want to go there. And I'm hoping to publish 2 more books in the next 3 months, but I've got to get my dissertation done first. That's my wife tells me that's job number 1. Don't so we'll go from there. So you want to unmute yourselves and ask questions, or
yes? Could we first give you some applause, because you've gone for an hour and you've been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the question period, I think we'll use the raise hand function of of Zoom.
If you could clear the screen so we could see everybody. In other words, if you
gotcha.
Yeah,
I got you. There we go.
Gotcha. Voila. Thank you so much. Great.
For the question period, we will use the raise hand function of Zoom. And for that, what you do is you go to the bottom. If you have a PC, you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you look for something that says reactions. You click that, and then you will see at the very bottom of that something that looks like a raised hand like this. Don't take the hand that looks like this or the thumbs up. Take the raised hand that's at the bottom. Click that, and then Zoom will place you on my participants list in the order that you raised the hand to the microsecond. And
let me jump in real quick. I have to say hi to Al Detter here. Al Detter was one of my very, 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 very best friends in high school. Now he looks much older than I do. I know that, but we are within 6 months of each other, and he's in Erie, Pennsylvania. So I gave him the link so he could join in as well. And he's not the guy I told you about that had the 800-page book. So that's not Al, but Al's a pastor in Pennsylvania, and I've known him for 100 years.
Great. Well, let's open the questions. Who would like to, let's see. The
first hand up is Grace Johnson.
Good, okay.
My question is, do you ever hire anyone to do the layout of the book?
Well, the layout is the same thing as the interior design.
Okay.
And I did hire someone for my first book. And then I thought it cost me about $1,200. And I thought, well, that's a lot of money. There goes all my royalties. And so I've done them all myself since then. I've not hired. The only thing I've hired out since that first book is the covers. And yeah, the covers. That's it.
Thank you.
It's if you use Word and you set the margins and everything correctly, and you understand section breaks and page, go online and say how to use section breaks. Because that has tremendous amount to do with your page numbering.
All right. And then now the next person up is Dave Kretzman.
Dave, you need to unmute.
You need to unmute yourself, Dave. Yes.
Oh, there he goes.
There you
I
go.
see him at the bottom. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a question. I've prepared an autobiography using a software project or a book project set of software called Scrivener. Are
Right.
you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
That outputs to Word or PDF formats. What do you think of it, the software overall?
Well, I think it's a great software. There's no question. There's 3 or 4 like that, like Scrivener is one of them. My fear with Scrivener and all of the other ones is that you will inevitably lose formatting. You don't lose text, but you lose formatting every time you convert from one software to another. And the big single problem of writing a book isn't next, I guess, writing the words is the formatting and the formatting that is inherent in the text that you don't see. You know, you can click the little thing in Word and you'll see all your formatting, but so often you lose formatting every time. In my experience, it's very frustrating because you'll look at page 233 on Scrivener, and then you go to page, you'll convert it to Word, and page 233 all of a sudden is page 232. And the picture's in a different spot. And with the 300 DPI, they're very digitally intense pictures. So my experience is that they work, and they're fine. I prefer to do everything in Word. It's hard enough to go from Word to PDF and back and forth without losing formatting.
So what I'm thinking then is at some stage when I feel ready, I convert to Word and work in Word from then on until I'm ready to convert to PDF perhaps. Would that be your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the fewer or the less converting you have to do. I know I got a pastor here, but he won't take offense. But the less converting you got to do, the better, because you get in trouble with the hidden, the invisible part of the book, which is the behind the scenes formatting. That's just my experience. I've not seen one that will go back and forth perfectly. And I've done tests, you know, where you can download for free for 2 weeks or something, of all of them, and I keep coming back to Word every time, because Amazon won't accept they won't accept anything but Word and PDF.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
And you also use docx when you save your files. You have to save them as docx, not as doc, or you're going to have to resend them again because Amazon won't take them, and neither will Ingram.
The next person up is Ken Krause.
Hi. I laid out 30-something bucks for the Association of University Presses book on university presses directory. Right. And I noticed there was a whole section in the back with various places that weren't associated with universities. They do list Baker and Taylor, but also things like Books International, GW College of Professional Studies, De Gruyter, right. Ithaca, Marquis. Are these self-publishing houses, or are they, I don't know, are they just publishers?
Well, I think you'll find a mix.
Okay.
From what you just described, those aren't all the same.
Right.
They do different things.
Okay.
And the challenge is that universities and libraries, especially community libraries, don't change and don't like to change. So they're not going to have to dig hard to find your book. So oftentimes you may struggle. You won't struggle, but the professor that wants to use a book that's published by a non-Ingram, non-Baker and Taylor, well, they don't even take Amazon, but not Ingram, non-Baker and Taylor, you may not get your book used in a textbook because the bookstore manager and it's not the academic people in big universities that control which textbooks can be bought. You're a professor. I was a professor. You can send in your list. These are the books I want. But then somebody buys those books for you in the university who is in charge of buying books.
Right.
And they don't enjoy having to go to some obscure place to buy the book and then have to do a purchase order and get permission and this publisher's not in our approved list from the university or the state. I know about state systems from San Diego Unified. And if I want to buy Carrier air conditioners, I can because as a school district because they're on Carriers on the approved list. Then I have to bid it. But if I want to buy Oshkosh made in Monterrey, Mexico air conditioners, I can't do it. So that's the only thing I would say about that.
Okay, great.
And university presses are going through crises.
I'm aware of that.
University of Kansas Press, which does a huge number of Native American books about Native American history, they may be shut down now. I don't know. The University of New Mexico Press, the oldest Borderlands press in the United States, has cut their list dramatically. Notre Dame, one of the most prestigious American presses, just drastically reduced because they're not making money for the university. That's the big problem. They're not making money on the presses. And so they're very hesitant and reluctant in this day and age. It has changed dramatically. When you see that 40% growth on independent publishing, that's as long as you can get on their approved list. And I don't think there's a university in America that doesn't buy books from Ingram. So that's why I highly recommend you do both. A lot of people just do Amazon. Well, that's great, but not if you're doing anything academic or you want your book in your local library. The San Diego, I know from being in the district, the San Diego public library system, county system, only buys from Baker and Taylor and Ingram.
Thank you.
The next person up is Jamie Panetta.
Yeah, well, thank you, Phil. That was a very interesting presentation, so I enjoyed it.
Where'd you go?
Just an aside, I found that Word has an index function that worked really well for me, so I wasn't sure why you wouldn't recommend that.
Well, it's because of the coding. The coding of the what are the XE codes that they put brackets in front of every citation, and then it's very difficult if you then change citations or not citations, if you change the indexing the way you're doing it or the words that are going into your indexing, you have to go into Word and delete the XE codes. I think they're XE. Is that right? XE. There's an XE code in front of it and behind it.
That's right.
If you're in 40 pages, I find that very cumbersome. You have to do show codes and then go in page by page and eliminate the XE. There is no, as far as I know, I'm telling you as far as I know, there is no way to eliminate all the codes in their entirety, especially if you reformat your book and all your pages are now different.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it does have a built-in system. Yes.
Yeah. Had another question. So I've self-published a book, and I found the experience very, very enjoyable. However, the part of marketing, I discovered that you have to become your own marketing agent.
Absolutely, yes.
And I wasn't prepared for that because if essentially you're a writer, you want to write, you don't want to spend time, marketing. So this is one of the disadvantages, I think, of self-publishing, that you really have to spend a lot of time promoting the book.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'd hear you say that, and I agree. I agree with you completely. You have to have a strategy and a way to do it. My number one place that I sell books no, okay. My academic books, I have about four of those is through the university system. But my number 2 overall for all my books is in-face conferences and workshops and traveling and going. I get invited to speak a lot because my subject matter is a little bit, it's either Mexican history or it's religion is conflict. I do a lot of work in religion and conflict. And so I go to conferences and there's not a lot of books on those subjects. There are books that tell you about the wars, the 100 Years' War or something, you know, but they're not specifically on the subject of religion and conflict. So I sell a lot of books at conferences, and I make more. I make much more off of those, even though I sell them for less than retail. The good news is I make more because I get more than even Amazon will pay me for a book. And I can charge the person significantly less. And Amazon doesn't care. That's fine. They have. I don't give my exclusive rights to them. But the other day, my supervisor, my dissertation supervisor, published his first book with Paul Palmgrove or Paul. It's a British press.
Palgrove.
What is it? Palgrove.
Palgrave.
Palgrave. That's it. Yeah, it's an academic press in Britain. And we had a conference, and boy, he was complaining that they're not marketing his book. and he says, I got to do all this myself.
Yeah.
And he said, I didn't think I'd have to do it all myself when I went with one of the highly, looked at. But his book is also $89. And my most expensive book is now $29. So I can't afford his book, so he gave me a copy of the manual. He gave me his book in Word. But I think people are generally disappointed in the amount of marketing that the publishing houses do for them as well. But no matter which way you go, you got to be prepared to do your own strategy for the marketing. And some people are just naturals. I'm not. I'm a natural talker. You probably figured that out by now. I was when I was 15. He can tell you that. But I'm a natural talker. But I'm not very strong in my marketing background. He and I both have Mennonite backgrounds, which has nothing to do with anything except we were taught to be humble. We were taught to not to say my book's the greatest book ever written. You can be in danger of perdition for that in the culture I grew up in. So I'm kidding when I said that. No, I'm not. That's the truth.
Great. Well,
I have a completely different question, and that is, how did you hook up with the University of Kent? There were two predominant ways. They have one of the brightest young Mexicanists in the world is a professor. He's a professor of Mexican and Spanish studies. Mm-hmm. Not Spanish as in the language, Spanish as in the country, the culture, the Hispanic culture of Spain. And he was, because he's young, he was willing to take on new dissertation students. Not everybody wants a new, some don't need new dissertation people. He was willing to take that on, and they arranged my program. I had to take a whole bunch of exams and tests to qualify for not having to take some courses, and to meet the statistics and the measurements kinds of things. I got through all those, and I was able to waive a lot of whether it was in England or whether it was online. They waived that for me, partly because I was 70 years old, and that's not true. I was fascinating because I was 70, but I passed the exams. I forget the name of the exams, but I passed the exams, and so I was able to move into candidacy quicker and focus on the dissertation. So those were the two things, and I just fell in love with my supervisor. He's just a terrific and knowledgeable. Oh my goodness, he's so knowledgeable about Mexican history.
Great.
Are there any more questions?
Before
What?
Before we go, I just like to ask Don Bamber if I could talk with him briefly after the meeting on Zoom. And Dorothy, yeah.
Grace Johnson has her hand up, I see.
Oh, sorry. Does she? Oh, there she is.
Unmute yourself, Grace.
Yes, she's mute.
And Gloria has her hand up too.
Ah.
Did you mention the title of your dissertation?
I did not. No, I'm trying not to think of it. No, I did. No, the title roughly is The Search for Lost Patrimony in Modern Nueva Vizcaya in the 1930s. And what I'm looking at, everybody knows about the Cristero Wars. Nobody knows about the Second Cristero War, which was fought in the 30s. And it was a war between the campesinos and the government over education, ideologies, religion, still about religion, and agrarian issues. So I'm dealing with the Second Cristiada, which is much less known than the First Cristiada, the famous Cristero War. And I'm dealing with the conflicts, agrarian, religious, and ideological, which are basically educational. They tried to change the school system in Mexico in the 1930s. And they shut down, if you remember, they shut down almost all the Catholic churches in Mexico in 1935. The state of Chihuahua had one authorized priest. In the most Catholic country in the world. Mexico's most Catholic. Today it's less, it's 77% Catholic in Mexico, but back then it was 98%. Up until 1873, it was illegal not to be Catholic. And I'm sorry, you don't care about that. Anyway, there I go. I'm starting to talk.
Gloria has her hand up too.
So first of all, this is the second time that I listened to Philip presentation. And I just want to say that when was it that you gave the one for NCIS? I can't remember.
November of last year.
November last year. So in that presentation, that's when I was introduced to DeepL, the translation software. And that has made my life so much easier. So when I received, and I think Dorothy, you remember when I received all the material in Japanese that I had to translate, and it was articles from newspapers from the 1930s and 1940s. I would just input all the material in there. The translation came out, and of course it wasn't 100% accurate, but it helped me so much. And it's one of the most reliable software that I can think of. So if it works for Japanese, I'm pretty sure that it works for any other language. And I tried it in Italian as well, and it works great. Then about the reference software, that's one of the issues that we've been discussing in NCIS at the board meeting. We will host a workshop on reference software, and we need to figure out when. And now that Phil suggested Satavi, I just was on their website. I will contact them and ask if they will be willing to come and give us a presentation. So according to Amanda, the president of NCIS, when something like that happens, they might have some kind of discount if we purchase the software as individual. So I'm going to send an email as soon as we're done here. But I want to thank SDIS for hosting this, and of course Phil for coming in today. And I know how helpful this has been for me, and it made my life easier in this last 6 months, that's for sure. So I just hope that everybody else also enjoyed it. Thank you, Dorothy.
And thank you, Philip, and thank you, everybody.
You have amazing new superintendent in San Diego Unified, Lamont Jackson. Amazing young man. He's going to do great things for the district. I couldn't be happier.
Okay.
Great. My opinion again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Al.
Okay.